And we're back, and thank you very much for joining us once again for another great episode. This episode, I tell you, I am a novice. I am in the receive mode, and I'm looking forward to being educated tonight. Welcome again to Inside Out, Exploring the Roads to Redemption. I'm your co-host, Dr. Lawrence, and I'm the proud executive director of A Bridge to Light, where we focus on not only enabling underserved communities to overcome obstacles that traditionally hindered their progress, but further, we focus on disabling the school and prison pipeline and further enabling the reentry of formerly incarcerated persons. And it is my pleasure and honor to be joined by our brother and friend, Mr. Thomas Cotton.
Welcome, welcome, everyone. Glad to be back. Thank you for joining us. Again, I'm Thomas Cotton, the founder and CEO of Redemption to and Advancement Alliance, where our mission is to disrupt the cycles of incarceration by helping the most important part of the process, the person, overcome their barriers. We're grateful you're here with us today. We want to make sure you like, share, subscribe, interact. Make sure that you interact with our podcast. We want to hear your feedback. We want to hear your thoughts. And if there's a time that you don't agree with anything we say, we want to hear your complaints about it. Because who knows, maybe one day we can have this conversation online. So thank you all for joining us again.
Thank you so very much, Thomas. You know, here at Inside Out, we explore the road to redemption and potential obstacles. And tonight we're going to talk about unique obstacles, complex obstacles that some may see as simple, but very complex and complicated obstacles. What a justice impacted person may encounter when they're attempting to reenter society. And Thomas and I, we have a history as far as being in Morehouse School of Medicine in a very, very unique program called the Justice Involved Care, the Masters of Administration Justice Involved Care program, which he and I met. And since then, we've been on a few shows together talking about violence, most recently the triangle violence. And we talked about contagious diseases and social injustice and health inequities and so forth. But tonight, we're going to look at a very, very unique situation. We're going to look at plea deals. We're going to look at plea deals. And some may see plea deals as a very simple aspect. You know, they offer me something easy and easier, and I'll take it. But here at Inside Out, we want to inspire thoughtfulness. We want to inspire thoughtfulness and not give simple answers to complex problems. I'm going to say that again. Especially when dealing in the justice system, there's very complicated issues, and sometimes simple answers will get people and communities hurt or killed. So tonight we're going to look at a complex issue, which I think is a complex issue, and that is what are the complexities associated with accepting a plea deal. Thomas Cotton, can you take us further?
Yeah, so when we talk about taking a plea deal, I mean, to most people, it sounds like, okay, that's just a part of the system. That's what we do. We have options. The option is go to trial, take a plea deal. You committed the crime, so you might as well, if you can get less time, take it. Save the system some money without going to trial. But there's a lot of different ways of looking at this. There's a lot of rights that are taken away from individuals when they do plea. To take a plea deal means that I have to give up my due process. I
Mm,
have to, make sure that I'm going to be okay. And when you look at the coercion toward plea deals, you'll understand why this is like putting a gun to someone's head and saying, hey, you either take this deal or else. And there should never be an or else. It should be an option. I can get this amount of time whether I go to trial or I don't go to trial. But a lot of times we don't look at it that way. We think that, well, if you've done the crime, just get it out the way. But what if there's a person out there who actually has done a crime or is involved with criminal activity, but at the time that they were arrested,
mm,
they
mm,
were maybe he's a drug dealer or she's a drug dealer, one or the other. and the cop planted drugs on this person. Now they can't even go fight because if they go fight, then there's a chance that they're going to spend way more time in prison trying to fight this because they try to fight something that wasn't right. Um, I've watched plenty of people in the wrong place at the wrong time have drugs planted on them. Now, I was doing my thing, but they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And if you imagine this actually happens, a lot of times it's hard for people to imagine things like that actually happen. A lot of times it's hard for people to imagine that the system is corrupted in some way or one place or another. There's different parts of this system we have to think about. It goes from the arrest, it goes to the district attorney's office, it goes to the courts. It's the systematic different challenges, and so there's a lot of moving parts in this process. And to take someone's rights out of that process, to me, is hard. Now, you can say, well, we're not taking your rights away. At the age of 22, I was arrested. I was 22 years old, 1 month, 4 days. And I was arrested. And that was the last time I was arrested. It was a little over 30 years ago. And when I went in, I don't have it here with me, but I got this thing called a bill of particular. And first time I met my attorney, 2 weeks later, brings me a bill of particular. And this bill of particular was 430 pages of what I did day for day for 4.5 months.
Hmm.
Like someone literally told what I did, and they, through their investigation, found out that for 430 pages worth of what I did day for day for 4.5 months. And so here I am, I'm faced with this. I know that they know everything that I've done, but you never caught me with anything. But because the charge is conspiracy, you don't have to catch me with anything. You just have to know that I knew about, I had knowledge about it. And because of that knowledge, if I decide to go to trial, I would have spent the rest of my natural life in prison. The rest of my natural life in prison. I couldn't challenge anything that was said about me. I couldn't, you know, say, no, that's not right, or get off on a technicality. There are no technicalities. You're going to go to trial and you're probably going to lose. See, in the federal system, there are numbers that you want to know that 4/10 of all defendants who go to trial are acquitted. 4/10 of 100%. So that's less than one of every person, 1 in 100 that goes to prison. So, I mean, that goes to trial actually is acquitted. Now, on the other side of it, if you go to trial, you're going to be found guilty the majority of the time, right? Now, over 99% of the time, you'll be found guilty. There are almost 90% of all people in the federal system plead guilty. And then there's about another 8% of all people who get off on some kind of administrative technicality. And so when you start to think about it, 90% of all people plead guilty, about 8% get off on some kind of administrative technicality. And so less than 1% actually are acquitted. With those kind of numbers, you don't want to try to go to trial because here's the other side of it. The flip side is you go to trial and you're found guilty, they're going to give you the full weight of your sentence, whatever that may be.
Hmm.
And when it comes to this injustice system, you know, there are some people who doing life sentences just for having knowledge about a crime, not necessarily committing that crime. And I'll get more into that here in a second. But I
Wow.
just want to share that when we think about plea deals, we can't think of it as black and white. In this show, we never do just whatever seems simple. There's no simple answers.
That's right.
But I will say this, when it comes to a plea, a lot of times there's more to it than most people would think. And why do we want to take someone's right away so much? Why is it always plea bargains are pushed toward people versus actually giving them due process?
Wow. 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 Thomas, again, just in the first 10 minutes of this of this podcast. You've unloaded a lot, and again, this when we try to speak to simple answers to complex situations, we're not giving it a full appreciation of the depth of the problem. And you said, so you said it's more than that as far as taking a plea deal or not taking a plea deal. It's other factors pressing against that person or pressing against that situation that influences their decision to take it or not to take it. Can you
Yeah.
speak to just a few of those more than that's those pressures, those variables that are pressing against people when they make a decision to or not to take a plea deal?
Yeah. I'm gonna share a story here in a minute about someone who had a choice in a plea, take a plea or go to trial. And when you hear this person's story, you're definitely gonna find yourself wondering, that was that justice or not. But I do want to say this: people commit crimes all the time, and those who commit crimes, you put yourself at the mercy of the court, anyways. You're in this situation. You have a choice now. But I do know that there are a lot of people who do not commit crimes and have not committed a crime, but they have to figure out whether or not they're going to roll the dice and put themselves at the mercy of the court, or are they going to see if there's something else that can be done? Like, I'm going to go to trial, I'm going to hire me a lawyer, I'm going to go through this whole process. Um, so one side is do all that, go to trial, and hopefully you win. The other side is I know exactly what I'm going to get. There's a predictability here. I might get a reduced sentence. So instead of me going to trial and put my life at risk or more time at risk, I'm just going to take the deal. There are those people. But then there are some people, like a person who was on my case, who um, didn't do anything.
Hmm.
And I attested to this the whole way through.
When you say he
He
didn't do
didn't
anything,
do
what do you mean by that? When you say
he
didn't
did
do anything?
not do anything. I'm gonna clarify
Yes,
everything.
sir. Yes,
He
sir.
did not do anything on my case other than have knowledge of what we were doing.
Okay. Yes, sir.
And that's it. He didn't sell any drugs. He took a trip to hang out just because he's cool with us. And because people knew who he was and he had knowledge of the conspiracy, the ongoing conspiracy, and because he didn't go to the police and tell them, hey, there's a conspiracy going on, he was wrapped into this conspiracy. Now, he knows nobody. So he is sitting there. I don't know anything about this. All the people who have actually done the crime are the ones who are locked up before him. They all took deals, myself included. Now, when this guy goes to trial, he has nothing to stand on other than I didn't do anything. I was just there. Now he could have took a deal. He could have took a plea deal. His plea deal, I think, was something like 27 to 30 years or something like that.
Hmm.
So if you have a plea deal on the table, and the only other alternative for you to do is tell on somebody to get your sentence wiped out or whatever, or lower sentence, and you didn't do anything, then you're going to look at the deal and say, why would I take this deal? I might as well go roll the dice. And this guy rolls the dice, goes to trial, and gets a life sentence.
Hmm.
Um, I hope one day we can talk about this on this show or one of my other podcasts, because this is one of those areas of those gray areas that happen all the time, where we think, well, the system is just. This is a total unjust situation. He went to trial and was found guilty just because he knew about the conspiracy. And the judge, his hands were tied and he had to give him a life sentence. This guy was 22 at the time, also 22 years old. Now, thank God that there's this law that changed a few years ago, and He did. He got out. It's coming up on 2 years, I think, or maybe 3 years that he got out. And you know, after doing 26 years in prison.
Wow. Wow.
But we want to talk about plea bargaining, and because the system really is coercive toward trying to get you to take a plea. The
Yeah.
pressure, the
Yeah.
time, the amount, the representation you have, you just got to roll with it. If you don't have money to be able to fight the system, to get adequate representation, you just literally have to trust that the system is going to look at you and say, okay, there's a beyond reasonable doubt here. And that's the other part we often miss, beyond reasonable doubt. That the onus is on the prosecution to present a case beyond reasonable doubt. And a lot of times we turn it around and we make it look like the defense has has to defend themselves, and they have to show and prove that no, this wasn't me. That's not the way the system's set up. The system is supposed to be set up to where it's beyond a reasonable doubt. Not that I can prove that you did a few things here and there, but can I prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you actually did all the things that you did? And so you take that away from people when we talk about plea bargaining. We take that away. The constitutional rights that are taken away through plea bargaining, um, because we have a constitutional right to a jury trial. But it's again, yeah, you have that constitutional right. You want to exercise it? Because if you do, I'm gonna hit you upside the head if you're found guilty,
Wow.
and
Wow.
I'm
Wow.
gonna take as much from away from you as I can. And so, we often talk about duress and decisions made under duress. Plea bargaining is one of those decisions that's often made under duress.
Yes.
And it's actually a decision that's always made under duress,
Yes.
because
Yes.
you have a choice to go to trial, but instead of doing it, I'm not going to do it, because if I lose, then I lose way more than I would by just taking this deal.
Wow.
I
Let's
took
let's
a
let's
deal.
hold with that. Let's hold right there. Let's
Yeah.
hold right there because you
I'm
dumping on
sorry.
him,
I'm,
man.
I'm
You
going,
dumping
going.
on him. You
Yeah.
dump and it's great. I mean, it's just you're going from your experiences, you're going from data, statistics, and we appreciate that. But this conversation is very, very important. It shows the complexities within the system. And the system is so massive. It's not just parts and pieces, as Thomas and I were talking earlier about. There's a segment of the system, then there's another segment of the system, then there's another segment of the system which speaks to a subsystem within a greater system, within that subsystem within a greater system. So I want us to be able to just digest what Thomas is speaking about, and overlaying this complexity to other complex issues that one may face when facing incarceration, reentry to society, um, living in a particular environment which is a feeder to the incarcerated system because of the lack of resources, lack of education, and so forth in those areas. And it's not because they don't desire those resources. It's just no one with the power, no one with the access is providing those resources there. So therefore, at times you force people into decisions under duress, and they make poor decisions, and they find themselves incarcerated.
Oh
So
yeah.
like, share, subscribe. This podcast, this episode in particular, share it to show the complexities of what appears to be simple, but not so simple at all. And tonight we're looking at the complexities associated with taking a plea deal or not. And Mr. Thomas Cotton was going to speak about being under duress and making decisions while one is under duress. Mr. Cotton.
So, Dr. Lawrence, when you brought this topic up yesterday, was it yesterday or the day before, whenever we were talking it through, and I'm pretty passionate about this topic.
Yes, sir.
It's one that hits right at home, because There are many people that I know who have limited education, limited critical thinking skills,
Yes, sir.
limited income,
Yes, sir.
and they're vulnerable. And they're in this vulnerable space where they're making bad decisions already. And no matter how much we fight against the system, they still want to try to trust that the system is for your benefit. But with all these limited education, critical thinking, and financial resources, when it comes to the process of plea or even just the investigation, a lot of individuals don't know the systematic way that things are done. A lot of times people don't even catch the words that are being used when they're being arrested through their Miranda rights. They don't catch the fact that it's can and will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. It's not, there's no need to have can in front of that. It's you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say will be used against you in the court of law. And a lot of times when we start thinking about the individual officers that are arresting, they're able to say whatever they want. They're able to coerce you into talking and promising you things that you can't even you can't receive from them. They're promising things that they can't even provide. And when you have these limitations, yeah, people may say, well, you shouldn't be doing crime anyways. Yeah, whatever. We'll talk about that later. But when you have these people who are here who may or may not have done anything, um, there are people who want to that should be able to have a chance at making it out and being able to share their story and being able to share their perspective. But regardless of what's being said, if the officer already thinks you're guilty, they're just going to try to coerce you into saying things so that you look guilty, and then they're going to hold you in a situation for longer than you want to. Dr. Lawrence, I think right now, let's pause and show a video.
Well, we end today's show with the tragic news that Khalif Browder has committed suicide. He was a young New York student who spent 3 years in Rikers Island jail without being convicted of a crime. On Saturday, Khalif took his own life at his home in the Bronx. He was 22 years old. In 2010, when he was just 16, he was sent to Rikers Island without trial on suspicion of stealing a backpack. Earlier this year, the New Yorker obtained explosive video showing the violence to which Khalif was subjected to there. In one clip from 2012, the teenager is seen inside Rikers Central Punitive Segregation Unit, better known as the Bing. As a guard escorts Khalif to the showers, Khalif appears to speak, and then the guard suddenly violently hurls him to the floor, although he's already handcuffed. In a separate video clip from 2010, Khalif is attacked by almost a dozen other teenage inmates after he punches a gang member who spat in his face. The other inmates pile onto Khalif and pummel him until guards finally intervene.
On the night of his arrest years ago, Khalif Browder was walking home from a party with his friends in the Bronx, May 15, 2010, when he was stopped by police based on a tip that he had robbed someone weeks earlier. He told HuffPost Live what happened next.
They had searched me, and the guy actually said, at first he said I robbed him and I didn't have anything on me. And that's
you
when—
say nothing, you mean no weapon and none of his property?
No weapon, no money, anything he said that I allegedly robbed him for. So the guy actually changed up his story and said that I actually tried to rob him, and then another police officer came and they said that I robbed him 2 weeks prior, and then they said we're going to take you to the precinct and most likely we're going to let you go home, and then I never went home.
That's right. Khalif Browder did not return home for 33 months, almost 3 years, even though he was never tried or convicted. For nearly 800 days of that time, he was held in solitary confinement. He maintained his innocence, requested a trial, but was only offered plea deals while the trial was repeatedly delayed. Near the end of his time in jail, the judge offered to sentence him to time served if he entered a guilty plea and told him he could face 15 years in prison if he was convicted. He refused to accept the plea deal, was only released when the case was dismissed. We're joined once again by Jennifer Gonnerman, reporter, author, contributing editor at New Yorker magazine. Welcome back to Democracy Now! Is it fair to say that the courts and the prison system actually took his life?
You know, I don't know what was going through Khalif's mind in those last few minutes, but it's without a doubt that he was completely traumatized by those 3 years that you talked about when he was trapped on Rikers Island, despite never having been convicted of a crime, brutalized by officers and fellow inmates alike, as your viewers saw in that video footage that you guys showed. He spent about 2 years in solitary confinement on Rikers Island and attempted to end his life several times while he was there, and described some of those incidents for me. And I wrote about some of it in the New Yorker. And then after he was released, released in 2013. Several months later, he again made another very serious suicide attempt and spent about a week in a psychiatric hospital. And yet he tried, every day to kind of beat back the nightmares and sort of transcend what he had lived through and make up for all this lost time. And he was, in recent months, he was enrolled in college at Bronx Community College, and he was doing well. I spoke to somebody there yesterday. He had a 3.5 GPA for this semester, which is extraordinary. I mean, he lost his junior year and his senior year of high school while he was locked up. So sort of every day he was sort of grappling with sort of trying to, move past what he had endured. But I guess the trauma was too much.
Okay, you attempted suicide 5 to 6 times.
Yes.
While still in prison.
Yes.
Wow.
And I tried to resort to telling the correction officers that I wanted to see a psychiatrist or a counselor, something. I was telling them I need mental help because I wasn't feeling right. All the stress from my case, everything was just getting to me, and I just couldn't take it. I just needed somebody to talk to. I needed to just I just needed to talk and be stress free. But the correction officers, they didn't want to hear me out. Nobody wanted to listen.
That is Khalif Browder. Now, again, he went to jail when he was 16 years old, never was tried. The judge said he could get out if he just pled out. And he said, no, I'm not guilty.
And that moment actually happened. He had been locked up for, over 2.5 years at that moment. So he had gone through all this incredible trauma and was given a chance to walk out the door. And almost anybody would take that opportunity, just put in the guilty plea to anything just to get home. He refused. He said, I did nothing wrong. And he just wanted that trial.
He hung himself on Saturday?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. I tell you, he gave the appearance that he just listening to it, he gave the appearance that he really didn't understand just the parts in discrete pieces that can kind of trip one up, when dealing with such a larger and or complex system. And that possibly, because I've never had experience with that possibly can be the experience of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Black and brown men and women throughout the United States. So I was just listening to it. Again, not having too much experience, no experience in that. I just felt that there were like little discrete but very important components that he kind of glanced over that was really exploited for the system's behalf, which unfortunately led to some mental illness and his death.
Yeah. When you think about Khalif Browder, I'm always going to remember that name. And I'm always going to remember his story because he represents so many people in this country who find themselves in a situation and they just want to go home.
Right.
Just want to go home. And a lot of times they're willing to make decisions because the environment they're in is not one where you want to be. I mean, when most people out here who watch this, who've maybe never been involved with the system, when you think about going to jail, what's the first thing you think about? You don't need an answer, or drop it in the chat maybe. But the thing is, what's the first thing you think about when it comes to going to jail or prison? It's rape, it's getting beat up, it's the terrible conditions, it's all these things, it's all the negativity. And here you have a 16-year-old going into Rikers, and he's constantly saying he didn't do anything, consistent with it. But it takes him almost 3 years to get to this kid. And all he wanted to do was go home.
Right.
That's it. He was willing to do whatever it took to go home. But in the meantime, you can't forget that he's still living. Just because he goes to jail or prison doesn't mean he stops living. He is still living. He is still feeling emotions. He's still going through challenges and trauma and different other things. And all he's trying to do is make it home. And that goes for anybody. I don't care if people have committed crimes or not. They're still people. And they're still trying to make it home. And they're still trying to give themselves the best opportunity possible. But taking a plea deal is just a setup a lot of times for the next time, because now you have a person who's here fighting for their life. In Mr. Browder's situation, he actually took his life because he couldn't deal with it. A lot of other people just go back to trying to figure out how to do life now with a felony. And now I have to try to live a brand new life that I was unsuccessful in the first place without any felonies. And now I have a felony. You're putting me back in the same situation and telling me I got to change, and it's hard. And so now that they've taken this plea deal, now they have one strike. They have a background. They have a criminal history. And now there's more barriers put up. But you want them to navigate those barriers. Yeah, you can say, shouldn't have done the crime. That's a whole different story. Again, we'll get to that, because there's social determinants of health that we haven't even addressed yet. There's different trauma and different things that people go through that we haven't even addressed yet. So you're looking at people who have the limited education, limited critical thinking, limited financial resources, and they're stuck in a jail trying to find themselves out, but they can't. And they're going through this hell, and they're trying to figure out and make the best decisions possible. And if you throw a deal out there and you say, hey, you can have time served if you just accept this deal.
Right.
Now, what is that person going to do? Because they know there's a risk. If I don't take this deal, I could find myself here for a longer period of time and no way out.
Right.
So again, I think when we start thinking about the plea deal, I'm not saying that people who commit crimes shouldn't have rights. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying they should have rights. I'm not saying that they are absolved from their crime that they actually did, but I'm saying they should have due process.
Right.
The due process should still be available, and you shouldn't have to put a gun to someone's head and say, hey, take this so we can save some money and move on to the next case. And so that's kind of where I'm at with a lot of this stuff. I mean, we can go on and on,
Right.
but that video sheds a new light on everything.
I tell you, you and I spoke about this. You mentioned it, and again, you just said it. If you do the crime, there's an accountability piece. There's an accountability piece. But in that accountability, everyone has to be accountable with respect to the person who allegedly committed the crime. But there's a process. There's a process. And it understood that if you did do the crime, that there's provisions to plea. But taking coercing someone to get their rights taken away immediately when they didn't do the crime, that is social injustice,
Yes.
which can lead to health inequities, as we saw in the video. So those are human rights violations that we need to further speak on specifically and drill down to it in future episodes. How at times the system will affect one's, again, social justice, health inequities, which can be on the borderline of human rights violations, just depending on who's calling it, what lawyer is looking at it. So that's critical. That is such a critical aspect. And again, tonight we're looking at the complexities associated and we're utilizing the plea deal. But you can substitute that plea deal with any other aspect that one may find themselves while incarcerated, while reentering, or in environments which lack the sufficient education, occupation, healthcare, social environment, and so forth, that is a feeder to the incarcerated system. So that being the case, we just can't say, why don't they just? Why don't he just take the deal? Why don't she just take the deal? Why don't they? Well, it's not that easy sometimes. It's not that easy sometimes. So I'll ask our viewing audience to attempt to look at problems that appear to be simple through different optics, through different perspectives, so you can get a greater understanding and respect for the problem and for the solutions or decisions one made with respect to that. Yes, sir. Yes,
You
sir.
know, to close it out, what I'm, about this plea, because we go on about plea bargaining, and a lot of times we're talking about things from a perspective that may not resonate with everybody. Some people may be for justice system the way it is, and some people may be anti-justice system. But I will say this: when you lean on the plea bargain so much within a justice system, there's a number of reasons why. And one is, maybe we can just get through this case quicker. The person committed the crime, they plea out, get it out the way, get it on. And that's one aspect, and that works. But there's another aspect if we want to go to the other end of the spectrum, which is a lack of transparency. When we start thinking about the way plea bargains are done, it takes away the scrutiny from the police, the prosecutor, judicial review. There's no public scrutiny. There's nothing that holds this system accountable because you don't have to go in and apply law to a plea bargain. That we have you, we know that you did this. Now you should take this deal. If you don't, we're going to give you, instead of 5 years, you're going to get 25 years. Um, that literally does not need any law applied to it. We caught you. That's it. It takes out the whole due process. It takes out every aspect of the law and does not give a person an opportunity to fight, an opportunity to defend themselves, and an opportunity to just say, "Hey, I think that this law was applied wrong here." There's nothing to do that. If you have a public defender who's not really into defending you, uh, they're not going to fight to apply the law in the correct way, anyways. So
Wow.
it's important that we keep our system of law intact so that people can have their opportunities for their due process.
Wow. I tell you, just as you were talking, it just reminded me of just the purpose of this show. Just the potential obstacles the justice impacted persons or community encounter when attempting to reenter society. These are obstacles placed at their feet upon when they first get in their initial entry into the incarcerated system. And so and now that creates a stumbling block per se for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Well, so it's very, very interesting, and we're going to come back and speak to issues such as this in the future, as far as complex issues that we tend, because of our background, because of our cultural makeup and so forth, we have a tendency to just make quick answers and quick judgments, which is the worst about a particular group, and why don't they just do this? When the problem is much more complicated. In future shows, we're going to look specifically to particular groups of people and really invite them on so they could give us their lived experiences as it
Mhm.
applies to our purpose here at Inside Out, exploring the roads to redemption. Tonight, we've looked at, again, the complexities associated with uh, the plea deals, due process, uh, and just other unique aspects associated with accepting or not accepting a plea deal, your rights and so forth. So, with that, we're going to close out right now. And as always, as I believe, as the executive director of A Bridge of Light, we believe that everyone and everything is a resource. It takes a network of progression to defeat networks of oppression. So how do we make the net work?
In our Redemption Advancement Alliance, we believe that as long as a person has a heartbeat, there's an opportunity for redemption. So as we look at people who are going through this justice system, let's not forget that they are a person that can be redeemed. We just need to be able to work together, as Dr. Lawrence said, to make the net work. I'm still that today, so it's good.
Yes, sir. Thank you, dear family, for just showing your patience with us, and prayerfully you learned something. And again, like, share, subscribe, and most importantly, engage. We want to hear your voice. We want to hear your experiences so we all can learn together. Thank you so very much for joining us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you very soon. Take care.